Yeah.
Anyway.
Just turn on PC. Hard to, yeah, because apparently they have a list of people waiting for boards or.
That's the way
not.
it is.
There's a reason.
His brain is.
Oh. Anyway, what a call.
Why do you do these things? It's your fault. It's your fault.
The rate that I'm not even.
See that?
And none of the other boards have gotten us to communicate with them.
Yeah.
So he
Just in
comes
case.
to the meeting.
You know better. It's your fault. Because you're supposed to. You're the opposite of supposed to. Mother Teresa.
What's the benefit to the public for this?
Especially with that situation. Well, you would if it were doing. It's not gonna do anything. Yep. Ready? All set? Can we start? Ready, set, go?
I got 6:59. Sounds close enough to me. I mean, that says 7, right? So,
No, let's see. 6:59.
yeah, that's what I got. Too. That is.
I don't see a whole hotbed of people.
If I keep staring at it, though, it might turn to 7 o'clock. Eventually, maybe in 1 minute. $7
Is
Good evening, everyone. Let's call to order the Board of Adjustment meeting for November 29, 2017. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Elliott,
Here.
Mr. Obowski,
Here.
Mr. Burris,
Yeah.
Mr. Eisner,
here.
Ms. Turner.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. I don't see a whole hotbed of people out there complaining. Anybody in the audience to object to this particular variance application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. We're going to skip, first of all, the minutes till the end of the meeting at the board's request. Could we maybe simplify the quasi-judicial announcement, council, in view of the fact that there's nobody here to object? Or
The quasi-judicial announcement is for purposes of the record and for also the applicant. So I'll be quick about reading it, though.
Okay, thank you.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Adjustment acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it's not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest?
Nope.
Seeing none. And is anyone wishing to speak this evening? Could you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So sworn.
Thank you. All right, let's first of all silence our cell phones. And when you come to the podium, please state your name and your address, if you would, please. There is one application for Fred Howard Park. Could we have the staff presentation, please?
Yes, Luis Serna, Calvin Giordano and Associates presenting staff comments. This application is to request a variance to relieve the applicants entirely of the landscaping requirements for parking lots and screening of adjacent land uses. Section 134.05, parking lot landscaping requires perimeter and interior landscaping for new parking lots. Section 134.06, screening requires screening between potentially incompatible land uses and along property lines. These requirements are basically 100 square feet of interior landscaping for each 5 spaces, and then an 8-foot buffer surrounding the site. The applicants are proposing construction of a facility for the rescue and rehabilitation of marine mammals to be located within Fred Howard Park. The proposed facility will not be open to the general public and will involve construction on a 1.09 acre portion of the 155 acre park. I see that the applicants' representatives are here. They can explain in more detail what is going to be involved in this facility. But our findings are, as is indicated in the application, that it is a centrally located facility not open to the general public and located within the park. It will not be accessible or visible by the public. Because of its location, the proposed development will not be visible from within the park nor from developed property located outside of the park. Our staff report contains the review criteria and our findings. They are in the report. Basically, I will summarize by going through to our findings of fact. They are that the applicants have proposed development on a 1.09 acre site that is centrally located within a 155 acre public park. The area surrounding the proposed development is primarily located within the public park and includes wetlands and water bodies which limit the development potential surrounding the site. The area surrounding the site includes large areas that are heavily vegetated, which serve to meet the intent of the landscaping and screening provisions of the Land Development Code. 4, literal enforcement of the landscaping and screening requirements of the Land Development Code would result in an unnecessary burden on the applicants. 5, because of the location of the site within Fred Howard Park, no impacts to surrounding properties will occur by granting the requested variances. Based on our findings contained in the report and the ones I've just addressed, staff is recommending approval of the variance for relief from the requirements of the parking lot landscaping and screening of adjacent land uses. And I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for the board? Well, let's hear from the applicant then, and the board may have some questions of either side after you make your presentation. Thank you.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Hurst. I am the Vice President of Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Give you a quick recap. We've clearly have been expanding on Island Estates, and with our collection and with bringing in rescued animals, one of our biggest concerns always is quarantine. And we don't want to infect our resident animals with any bacteria or funguses or any health issues. So with our expansion, we have been able to expand out, but we're losing our quarantine ability. So I reached out to Pinellas County about 1.5 years ago in search of land, and we originally targeted Sand Key Park. It was right there on the inlet, close to CMA, and we found that that wouldn't work through some building code, not really building code issues, I guess, but county issues related to how the language was written for the park. So the Director of Parks and Recreation continued to work with us, and we identified that Fred Howard Park was a great location. It worked with the attorneys, it worked with the state, however they worked everything out. So they actually leased us, or basically gave us a 5-year term, extendable for 5 years on this 1.9 acres, actually a little bit larger. We're only building on part of it right now. And so our intent is we are going to start, it's a 2-phase project. First phase is clearly taking care of site work, and we're going to install one 40-foot round pool that's 8 feet deep. and that will be our immediate need for bringing an animal in. We're going to have a small, what I'll call a research motorhome or camper that'll actually be our laboratory and stuff that we'll bring in when and if we're there housing an animal. If an animal does come in, we are there 24/7. So we're maintaining that animal. The animal typically goes anywhere between a 30-day and a 60-day quarantine. And then depending on the health of the animal, it may or may not be moved to CMA or another facility. Our long-term plan in another year, we've asked for some grant funding. We actually would like to put a larger pool in, a 40 by 60. Again, for these larger animals, especially pilot whales, we want a little longer lineal swimming pattern. So being able to have a 40 by 60 pool. When we do that, we also then want to kind of build a permanent laboratory, if you call it, where our team can work out of when an animal is there. As we've told the staff is that we will only be there when there's an animal, and if there's no animal there, the building is secured. Our facilities people will go by, of course, and check on equipment and so forth, but it's not manned. The nice thing about the park as well is what we were looking for is a secure location, not only away from the public. We don't need the public's eyes on us. We need to focus on the animal. So this was a perfect area because we're literally in the park, outside of the public area, and it was just a perfect location. So hopefully we can get through all of this, and we'd love to start construction in January. We've got our drawings pretty much done, getting ready to submit to the building department.
Okay, thank you. Comments
you.
from the board, questions? Just one for me. You said it was a 5-year lease. I read here it's a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options.
There you go. That's where I got confused.
Questions, comments?
I got a question. So I'm
Yes, Mr. Hrabowski.
reading your hardship letter, the last statement. It is also a hardship for the project based on the costs for purchasing, installing, and maintaining landscape plants. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to do everything. We're a not-for-profit. We're trying to do things as cost-effectively as possible. And this project's going to cost us about $750,000, and I don't even know that I've got all of it. I'm trying to squeeze it together. So any dime I can save is beneficial.
Right, and I appreciate that. And I'm wholeheartedly in favor of your proposal. But in our rules, in determining whether to grant a variance to the board shall not consider any evidence that is based upon conditions including financial or health conditions which are personal to the applicant or any other member of the family, applicant's family or household. And I only bring that up because we have another item on our agenda. You see, if you were doing this to the county doesn't have that rule.
Right.
But we do as a city, and we need to change that so that we could take into consideration something like that, which would make perfect sense to most of the world. And, but I'm not allowed to consider that. So I just thought I'd let you know.
Duly noted. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we've had this discussion for a couple of years. It's really kind of an in-house issue that we've noticed. And the same thing happened with our local housing authority. They came up for a variance just to save what, $2 million or $3 million or something like that. And that was the only reason for their variance, and it was granted at that time. But hopefully the city commission will see fit to change the ordinance, and we have that coming up, as Mr. Hrabowski said. Mr. Burris, you look like you want to say, Jackie, anything?
I just wanted to say that I'm happy to hear Tarpon Springs can partner and support the good work of the aquarium.
We appreciate it.
Welcome to Tarpon.
We've had great reception with the staff. Everybody's been really helpful, and we clearly had a couple of hiccups with, FEMA and working through logistics and everything else, and the staff has just been really supportive, and we've been welcomed warmly by them. So thank you.
I'm supporting you 100%. We are on board. I'm
Great.
very pleased that you picked this town.
Well, thank you. And, just as a quick footnote, I'm sure you guys have seen Fred Howard Park. We had a mass stranding 3-4 weeks ago where we actually brought 8 animals out of the park. 5 of those animals were transported to SeaWorld. Unfortunately, none of them made it. One of our thoughts, again, was, crap, if our pool would have been here, we could have moved them straight to a pool. We may have saved them. And currently, right now, my team is driving to Hernando County for a dolphin on the shoreline over there. So this is a much-needed facility. We like this location as well because we are responsible for everything north of Pinellas County all the way up to Citrus. So it does get us a little bit more centrally located to all of our responsible counties. So we appreciate it and we thank you.
And we thank you for considering Tarpon Spring. Well, I don't see anybody in the audience. Any comments from the public? All right, are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any comments on the motion? Let's have a roll call vote, please, Kim.
Ms. Turner,
Approve?
Mr. Eisner,
Approve?
Mr. Burris,
Approve.
Mr. Urbowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes. Okay, your variance has been granted. You have 2 years, I believe, to get a permit, or else come back for an extension. Thank you and good luck. We appreciate it. Will there be any lighting, lighting at night? Will it be nothing to do with anything we're doing, but I mean, for in the air, is anything lights? Any lights in the? It's just.
I have one quick curiosity question. It's just, I know it's not open to the public, but will you allow tours from, say, the high school or anything
Why
like
don't you
that?
get on the, if you can come to the mic. We have a vast television audience, the CNN is going to pick up.
No worries, no worries. It is not our intent to do that yet. However, we have had internal conversations of, could there be an educational component to this down the road?
Right.
And we have to be very careful because, of course, we are permitted through National Marine Fisheries. We're permitted through Fish and Wildlife. And ultimately, in those regulations, we're not allowed to bring guests in. Yet on the flip side, I think if we felt the need and we could petition National Marine Fisheries and we could show that we were not bringing any harm or any issues to the animal, we could potentially do that. But at this point in time, the answer would be no, it would be off limits.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Grenzer? John, can you pick up on a microphone somewhere over here?
I'm John Glenzer. I'm an alternate to the board, and I wholeheartedly support the efforts and everything. Think it's wonderful. Great effort.
Thank you.
One of my concerns, and I was a little curious that there was nobody from the representing the parks here, but if you have a 5-year lease or a 10-year lease with a 5 and a 5, or however long it is, I would have questioned more the parks and said, what are their plans for the rest of the area around you? Do you have like a moratorium that nothing can come around you from 10 acres or something like that? Or could they put a classroom right next to you that would require in the future maybe some screening or landscaping? It's not your issue. I just wondered if that
Right.
came up.
It did in one aspect because clearly one of the other issues and the other reason for being away from the public and away from any construction is one of the number one things that's harmful to animals, especially, I'm going to rephrase that, harmful to cetaceans, is dust. And if you think about an animal or a dolphin's respiratory system, they do not have hair follicles like we do. They can't filter out particles. And they're a water-based animal. So if you have building and construction happening close to you, you have to do a lot of preservation for your animals to maintain their health. So that was the very first thing we asked the county is, do you foresee any expansion, construction? Could there be anything that could inhibit the well-being of the animals? The reason for this location was they have a 10-year plan. They had nothing in their 10-year plan that would affect our footprint or anything close to us. We did look at another park, and I just lost the name, and I'm sorry, but they're doing a big expansion there, and they even brought it to my attention. They said, we don't want you to come here because we see a lot of expansion happening in this park.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we're a little
Thank you.
out
Have
of
a great
order,
evening.
but no harm, no foul. Okay, you're all right. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's go back to our agenda, and we have the approval of our minutes for October 25. Any comments? Okay, motion, somebody?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion
Aye.
carries. Thank you. All right, next we're moving on to staff comments, public hearing schedule.
Pat McNeese, Principal Planner. The only staff item we have this evening is establishment of the 2018 public hearing schedule. I'd like to call your attention to the schedule in your packet. The third item down is the Board of Adjustment meeting dates. Just want to identify any major conflicts with those dates at this time, if we can. If not, you can get back to us in the next few days on any conflicts before we confirm that schedule.
Any thoughts about the schedule at this time? Thank you very much, Patricia.
Thanks.
Next item, we have this letter of transmittal to the Board of Commissioners with our recommendations for the change to the Code of Ordinances. It's been put off for a few months until it was on the agenda per our legal department, so now it's on the agenda. And see nobody in the audience to comment on this item. Are we ready for a motion?
I mean, you can move to approve it. This could have gone through the city management before, as I told you at the last couple meetings. I said this could have gone through the city management before. I told at the last couple meetings that we discussed that. But yeah, if you want to move to approve to authorize what you've put, authorize the letter to the Board of Commissioners, then have it signed and have staff submit it for you. That's
All right, any comments on the letter? So do we have a motion to approve, and then we'll pass it down?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Comments? All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, let's start off with Ms. Turner, if you could sign 2 copies there, please. And pass it down.
We don't have to sign this thing, you need 2 copies.
Yeah, we got 2 coming.
Okay.
Kim, if you could make, Kim, if you could make copies for us and email it to. Mr. Glenser, you're on this letter too. It's over here.
Pluma. Grazie.
It's over here.
I'll be right with you. He's going back that way. You can bring this to Kip. To you.
Thank you. All right, anything else on the agenda? Comments from the board?
Just what procedure happens from here with this?
Well, now we become private citizens, just asking our city commissioners to adopt an ordinance. So we would adjourn this meeting and then discuss it privately. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, whatever you do as private citizens, you can do on one-on-one. Obviously, the board can't discuss it any further as a group. That letter can be submitted by staff to the city manager, and he can give it to the commission. But other than that, this board can only go as a private citizen to lobby with whatever you want to do.
All right, let's meet as private citizens just outside the front door of the building if we can and discuss our presentation to the city commissioners. Okay? Meeting's adjourned at 7:20. Thank you.
We just ask that you all remember sunshine. Understanding your meeting as private citizens, but that you remember, I'm just saying, as your board attorney, I advise you to remember sunshine.
We do, but that's just
So-
for foreseeable action by the Board of Adjustment.
I'm just stating, I just advise you to remember sunshine. Whatever that means to you in this capacity is up to you. You're adult, you understand.
Wait a minute. Are you going to keep your packet?
Yeah, I have mine. I just,
Yeah, I just wondered if you
yeah,
wanted
I
to.
just have it like whenever you email me, I print and scribble and read.
And if you want, you can pick it up. Or
I'm just never here during, business hours.
not print you one.
Yeah, don't bother printing me one. Yeah, because I had asked Heather for a second. Like, don't bother printing. She goes, oh, we have to print for everyone. It's like, save the paper, just don't print me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So save my little, like, as a sapling.
Yeah.
It would be.
Oh, yeah. So hopefully, I'm not sure what you guys is.
It's up to Heather, if
Yeah,
she,
I'm
of
assuming
course,
she's
go
okay
through
with
her
that. She
first,
told me
but
she-
yeah, if she's too busy, then, yeah, give it to me, but,
So,
yeah,
do
this
that.
last one I did was sort of unusual,
Yeah,
not typical.
not typical. This next one is. Leave the permit for detail. Laid the thing out. Theoretically, the 3/4 was fine. I know.
I've heard of that happening before.
So it's it's an interesting one for me to say.
Yeah,
so,
they're all weird.
And then we'll see if Heather, so are you up for coming in December or you want me to just do it? It's Christmas week.
It's up to, and I'm not going anywhere for Christmas.
Okay, so I'll ask Heather what she
If
wants.
I do, I'm
'Cause-
taking it just a day.
Okay. Yeah, because even if I do it, I'm thinking if you're around and she's okay, would you want to come?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
That way, as we get into issues and things, if I mess something up,
Yeah,
on the first go around.